Looking today at why somebody might like to do what they do, what's behind the story, what's behind the reason why someone will go out of their way to help other people and to support other people. And today I've got Sue Plumtree with me, the delightful Sue Plumtree. Thank you very much, Sue, for coming along and talking.
Thanks for asking me.
Well, you've always been a joy to talk to, and I just want to say that to the listeners. Just watch Sue as she's speaking because everything about her shares the excitement of what she's doing now. And that's a real testimony because Sue, it wasn't always like that, was it? I mean,
Oh
how
my
long?
God, no, no. I think I'm going to share with you going back quite a long time with my parents. My parents were born in a country that no longer exists called Austria-Hungary. My mom from Vienna, my dad from Czechoslovakia. They met in Prague, and it was love at first sight. And then there was the invasion of the Nazis, and they were forced to flee, and they happened to land in the jungles of Bolivia. It's all relevant to my how I became the woman I became. So, my dad had been a journalist. My mom used to be a dentist assistant. None of those professions, there was any call for that in the jungle of Bolivia. So my dad always used to love everything electric. And so he became the um, electrician looking after various villages in the neighborhood. My mom became a cook for the workers at the Yacimientos Petrolíficos Fiscales de Bolivia. That's the oil company drilling for oil. And when I was still very young, she told me a story about my dad. And she said, your dad had been called to sort out an electrical problem that was affecting a neighboring village. And he started walking through the jungle towards that village and accidentally stepped on a nail. Can you imagine the pain? But your dad continued to walk to the village and sorted out the problem. See what a hero your dad is. And I interpreted that you have to be a hero to be admired and accepted. And I became a hero. But my way of becoming a hero was never ask for help, be super independent, because I thought people would appreciate not being a burden, not being needy or demanding. And what I didn't know was that I was keeping love at arm's length. I had no idea I was doing that. But that changed actually in 2009 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And the oncologist said that he would only operate on an outpatient basis if I had someone stay with me for the next 24 hours. And that meant having to ask for help. And I was sweating bullets, but I had no choice. So I called this friend and she said, but of course, in a heartbeat, just like that. I was amazed. And much later, I realized that people love to help because it makes them feel they matter. And that transformed the way I saw, not immediately, obviously, but it took time. But I got the message that people love to make to feel that they make a difference.
I think that's so important, and it resonates with something I was thinking about recently, which we all know that phrase, it is in giving that we receive. But I was contemplating that phrase and thinking, actually, we could say that the other way around and say it is in receiving that we give. Because if we receive something from
Yes,
somebody else, we're
yes.
giving them the joy of serving us, aren't we? And that's exactly what you experienced.
Let me tell you a story about my mom.
Mm.
She was a giver. And she would give and give and do and do and give and give. She would never accept anything back. Never, ever. And so I asked her once, I said, how do you feel when you give, when you do all these things for people? And she said, oh, wonderful. Why don't you let me feel like that as well? And she said, oh, I never thought of it that way. And nothing changed. You know, but people don't think like that. They think they're being generous by not asking or receiving.
Mm.
But it's part of my teaching that
I
it
think
brings people closer.
it definitely does. There's in fact, if somebody's always giving to you and always doing for you, you're often left feeling in a lower place. It's almost like you can't reach their level and you can't connect. You can't actually let them completely into yourself because
Mm,
they won't let you into them. So there's always going to be a barrier of some kind behind you.
yes,
It doesn't enable the other person to grow, does it? If you're always giving, 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 how can they grow?
exactly. Yes.
It's
Yeah. And
it's
we're not meeting as equals either.
exactly.
Yeah.
One is always on the upper hand, really. And often people who do that, there's often it comes often from a lack of self-confidence, a lack of self-worth, that they are worth somebody else looking for them, looking after them.
Yes.
And they think it's a position of strength, but actually it's often a position of weakness because they're hiding behind that constant giving.
I read a book once. I used to be a fixer and a rescuer. And I thought people would really appreciate it. You know the story about the old lady and you want to help him across the street, but she didn't want to cross. So I would help people whether they wanted to or not. And then I read this book, and there was this one sentence that completely changed my attitude almost overnight. And it was, you're robbing them of the opportunity to grow.
Mhm.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm a nice person. I wouldn't do that to anyone. It shocked me to the core.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. I can
Mm.
imagine. So you've so obviously lots of things have changed. There's that sort of period of growth, and obviously that was a difficult time. Being diagnosed with breast cancer is not an easy time to go
Yeah.
through.
I
So
lived alone at the time.
and then having to ask other people to share that with them, and then say, I need your help. It's quite a vulnerable place to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. But afterward,
So
that was the only time I kind of dealt with that on my own because I didn't share my fears with anybody.
right,
Mm.
and that's because you weren't always on your own, were you? I mean, you had been married for quite a long time.
I think you might say it's equivalent of having been on my own. I yes, I was married for 37 years, and that is actually those 37 years, they were not a barrel of laughs at the time, but looking back, they became a treasure trove of learning. Let me tell you how the first hugest mistake I ever made. My parents were seriously overprotective, and it was their dream that I should become a secretary, trilingual, because I was fluent in German from Vienna. We spoke German at home, and Spanish because we lived in Buenos Aires after the war. That's when my parents moved to. And my parents thought that if I was also fluent in English, I would be highly popular in the job market when I got back to Buenos Aires. There is this joke about how to make God laugh. You make plans because that's not what happened at all. So on this one day, after 3 months, I just arrived in England for 3 months, and I went to a concert. And I went early because I wanted a good seat. Turned out that the whole room was completely empty except for one man sitting right bang in the middle of the room by himself. And I took a look at him and I liked what I saw. He had black hair, dark rim specs, and the cutest dimples. So I plonked myself right next to him. Now, this is England. You don't do things like that at all. So he was startled, but didn't know what to do about it. So I started chat, chat, chat. And then I decided I was going to see if I could make him fall in love with me. And unfortunately, I succeeded because 3 months later, he asked me to marry him. And this is what he said. He said, Sue, I care about you. Let's get married.
Mm.
He never, ever said, I love you, ever. I used to say, I love you, hoping to get it back. And I would say, I love you. And he would say, yes. And I said, yes, what? You love me. And one day I asked him, why do you love me? I was still a young bride, hoping he would say nice things about because you're this and that and the other. He said, because you love me. And one of the things about my parents, they absolutely adored each other. And one of the things my dad used to do for my mom was he would write little love notes for no reason at all. And she would stick them on a board and kept them until she died, and she was 94. And so on that day, I thought I was preparing his lunchbox when, and I thought I'll write him a little love note, and I hid it in the box. And for the rest of the day, I was on tenterhooks. I was imagining him opening the box, finding the note, and feeling all gooey and, how lucky that we found each other. So eventually he came home, didn't say a word. And I said, and did you see my note? And he said, yes, I did. Don't do it anymore. It doesn't do anything for me. It broke my heart, but I never showed it. I went like many people go, oh man, like that. And there were loads across over the years, little pricks like that. And they ate away at me for a very long time. Yeah,
So you continued in that marriage, you began to
I
realize that
did.
things weren't right.
It never occurred to me that I might not have him in my life. It just never occurred to me. And then when I was 56, I met a man called Alan, and Alan became my first life coach. And we worked together for 12 years
Mm.
because there was always more.
Mm.
And once I climbed a metaphorical mountain, there was another one and another one. And so in that time, I got to let go a lot of my masks that I used to hide behind and pretend that I was whatever I thought people would appreciate about me. I would be like a chameleon. And little by little, I learned to let them go.
Yeah.
But it took time.
Well, there's a lot invested, isn't there? I mean, if you're watching this video and you're thinking about your own relationships or your own life,
Mm,
it's easy to fall into relationships without realizing the full extent of them. In fact, that's invariably true when you get married. You can't possibly know everything, and you hope that the things that you discover will bring you closer. Will show you more and more good sides to the person that you've married. But of course, they also show you the other side too. And I
yeah,
think, you've mentioned something really telling in that phrase that he'd never said he loved you before. In fact, even in his proposal, he didn't say he loved you.
that's right.
Um, a huge warning sign, really. But you'd already decided, in a sense, that you were going to marry him.
Well, I said yes because I believed nobody would ever ask me to marry them. So I
Right.
accepted immediately. So, I knew nothing about myself. I was just thinking of uh, what, yes, I hadn't, yes, that's right. I hadn't seen my parents for a very long time, since I came to England, in fact. And we decided together to bring them over for a holiday, a 1 month holiday. And it was absolutely wonderful to see them again. And what I remember the most was we were talking and laughing, and it was just wonderful. And when they left, I was struck by the emptiness in my marriage. I just suddenly realized, how empty it was. But the other thing that happened in that month was that I put on a lot of weight, a lot of weight. And so, by way of distraction, I went immediately on a diet. All my life, I was up and down like a yo yo. But on that occasion, my weight kept just falling off. I wasn't
Mm.
hungry. It was great. So, and then after a couple of weeks, I started feeling hungry again and I panicked. And I also decided I didn't want to deprive myself because I like to eat. And so what I did was I would stuff my face and then I would make myself vomit. And I became like skin and bones. And there were people at work, women, who said, you're looking really haggard. But I thought they were jealous, except for one friend. I don't know whether it matters that he was a man, but he was called Doug, and he was worried about me. And he really, really urged me to go to see my GP.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I went. And the reason I say for some reason is that people in my situation don't ask for help.
Mm.
But I went. So, and then, he said, why are you here? And I said, I've been losing a lot of weight, but it's not a problem really, because I can handle it. And he said, well, how do you handle it? And I went,
Mm.
my finger. And his face was grave. And he said, you're suffering from an eating disorder called bulimia. And if we don't treat it straight away, you could die. And he referred me to a psychiatrist. My feet didn't touch the ground. It went so fast. And after a while, he said, you have to tell your husband. Now, if you can imagine, he sees me every single day stuffing my face and the weight falling off me. I was skin and bones, and he never said a word, ever. And so I did tell him because I was struggling to get back to heal. And his way of supporting me was when I was struggling not to make myself vomit, he'd say, pull yourself together, pull yourself up. You know, I don't know why I'm laughing, but looking back, it just seems so ridiculous. But one thing I did know, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. And there was a woman, the wife of my manager, when I was still a secretary. She took an interest in me. Her name was Sandy, and she taught me how to eat again. One bite, one little piece of a grape, or until I learned to eat again.
Mhm.
And eventually I regained my health. But then I realized that it wasn't enough not to die. What I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be happy. And soon after, I met Alan, who became my life coach. And that's when my journey started with him.
So there was a huge, there were many years then that you were feeling uh, well, lost, alone, unloved, unappreciated. Did you just sort of tell yourself it's probably normal? Did you think that this was what other marriages were like?
A good question. Um, do you know, I don't know is the answer to that. I don't know whether that occurred to me. My friendships were also fairly superficial.
Mm.
I'm trying to think who else I knew that I could compare myself with. But I don't even think I thought, no, I don't. The answer is no, I didn't. I can't remember comparing. I just, it was my life. That's how it was. But
And you probably, like many people, I mean, particularly back then, but even today, people get married and they assume that they're getting married for life. This is a
yeah,
once choice. You don't get married just, oh, I'll try it out for a few weeks and see how it works. It's not like you do a trial period.
no,
Um, and I mean, divorce rate has gone up. And in some ways, that's not a bad thing because people aren't staying in those
that's
relationships
right.
which are really destructive. But at the same time, I think there's a different approach. But most people in general, when you say yes to the person that you're going to marry them, you are committing yourself. You're assuming that this
I was
person.
also dependent on him in many ways because he used to do things around the house, the, all the technical things, the electrics and the plumbing and whatever, that I had no idea about what to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, I and then he was made redundant, and I was working for the Institute of Directors at the time, and I would commute every day while he stayed at home, mostly playing games on the computer.
Right.
And he, I would come home, he had microwaved something, then we would watch the telly, and I would go to bed. And then next day, I would go to work, I'll come back, eat something microwaved, watch the telly, go to bed. That was my life,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And it never occurred to me, it was, this is the thing about habits. You're not aware you're an automatic pilot or that you are living in a habitual manner. I was just doing it because that's what you did.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It had
but
become a,
it
a
also
habit.
meant, but I was very resentful that he didn't help out in any other way. And I never put foot in the kitchen for nearly 20 years. Like, but I go to work, I do this, and he doesn't do anything. So that's the least they can do, the resentment oozing out of me.
So how long were you working with um, your life coach? How long were you working with him before you began to realize that your marriage wasn't what it should be?
He mentioned it many times, but I refused to contemplate it. Um, and I think I was 50. So we started working together when I was 56. And it must be about 4 years, be 56, close to 60. Must have been, it was actually 59 because it took me about a year before I finally, having decided it in my head,
Mm,
it took about a year before I finally took action.
mm.
And then that meant moving out of the master bedroom into a little guest room. And actually, he helped me move in. I mean, I mean, I knew by then it was absurd, but I didn't mention it, because I didn't want, but by then I had completely decided, and nothing he would say would sway me. That was it.
Yeah,
So I didn't bring it up because I wasn't interested in anything he would say.
no. So then, so you moved into the spare bedroom, into the guest room, and then how long before you actually moved out altogether?
Um, that was probably, yes, about 8 months, about 8 months. Um, and then I left. But it was really hard because, I'm trying really hard to make it to sort it out so that we could sell the place and have the money to get our lives together. But it felt like he was working against me.
Mm.
And then I remember a couple of weeks before the date we were supposed to move out, I went on a course. It was called Spiritual Renewal.
Mhm.
And in that year that we were still together, I I remember I was so overcome with anger and rage, and that it was like my heart snapped shut.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it's a physical sensation. It is absolutely horrible. And my eyes were cold when I looked at him.
Mhm.
And and I tried to forgive him because people say it's what you're supposed to do. And I tried really hard. And I couldn't forgive him. I did exercises, I read books, I went on seminar, couldn't do it. And then I went on this um, spiritual renewal. And one of the things that she did was she invited people to the hot seat, presented them with a bowl with loads of little folded pieces of paper. And she said that whichever one you choose is meant specifically for you. So I sit down, she offers me the bowl, I pick up a piece of paper, and it says, embrace forgiveness. And I'm going, no, I can't do that. And I went blah, 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 all the pain, all the rage just pouring out of me. And then finally, I was spent. And then
Wow.
she invited me back to my seat. And she said, we are going to do a forgiveness meditation. But before, who do you want to forgive? And instead of saying Bill, I said me, which was a shock because I don't know where that came from. And then she said, yes, but which part of you? And I blurted out, the part of me who believes I wasn't worthy of love. Oh shit, who said that? I was shocked to the core. I had no idea. I believed that. But when I looked at the evidence of my life, my marriage, the friendships, it was clear that I didn't believe I was worthy of love. I just hadn't realized it until that moment. And then we did do the forgiveness meditation, and I decided, of course, it won't work. It went something like, um, I know that you can't forgive yourself. You tried, but God, but give it, to God or the universe. Surrender your pain to Him, and um, and they'll sort it out, basically. So, uh, and when the meditation finished, I was feeling much lighter. It was really a most extraordinary experience. And I was wondering what it would be like to go home and look at him. And I looked at him with tenderness and softness for the first time in I don't know how long. And then we worked together as a team, to sort it all out.
Isn't that, I mean, we'll talk about this a bit later on, but a lot of your story is based around um, that we need to start with ourselves. It's very easy to build up this wall around us of all the
Yeah,
things that they've done. And it might not even be a person that's done it, it could be situations in life. It wasn't fair that this happened to me. Why on earth did that person say this? And why did that tragedy happen? And we can build up this wall around us and never let go of the pain that's inside of us. It almost gives us
yeah,
an identity. And we can almost, it's not exactly relishing in it, but it's kind of, it can fire you in the wrong way, can't it? And you don't
yes.
recognize, you start trying to get them to sort themselves out. If only
Yes, that's
they
what I
would do
did all the
this.
time,
Yeah.
trying to
If only
change
he would.
him. When he changes, everything will be fine.
Yes. And yet there was something inside of you that needed that touch, that forgiving touch,
Yeah,
to release. And that, again, if you're watching, then think about that because it's very profound. And it's certainly been true in my life too, that Um, if we don't forgive ourselves, if we don't let go of our own, um, the things that we've hurt ourselves with, not intentionally. I mean, you didn't set out
Yeah,
to hurt yourself, but with everything that was going on inside of you, that's what was happening. You were actually hurting and damaging yourself, and we end up we're constricted. We can't have good relationships. We can't make progress in life because
no,
we're not ready to. We're just not
yeah.
ready to. So you had all this time with Alan. He was really helping you. How often did you see him, by the way?
Every 2 weeks, come rain or shine,
You made
for
that
12
appointment.
years.
Yeah. And somebody might think, gosh, 12 years, he wasn't very good at his job. That's what they might think. They might think, surely she should have been
God,
able to do
no,
this in
no,
4 weeks. But
I trusted him completely, and he stood by me every step of the way.
yes.
Yeah, loads
And
of milestones. It's not like, you work together for 12 years and then you're on the other side and it's done. It's a process. You keep changing along the way.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, he was allowing you to grow at the rate that you could manage as well,
yes. And
rather
he
than,
kept pushing. Um, he would say, do this. And I'm going, no, no way. And then I didn't reach this bit, but I reached that bit. So, but no, he did push. He
yes,
did push.
with love by the sound of it,
Yeah. I, it was
genuine
good.
care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, a good coach, serious. I mean, he was the reason I became a coach.
Yes.
That he was the one to see the impact it had on every area of my life
Yes.
is what made me decide I wanted to do the same for others.
Yeah. And that in itself is a testimony to who you are, Sue, because the coaching industry has exploded over the last few years. You'll see things about coaches all over the place. And I've come into contact and been damaged by those who are in it for the money. They think, oh gosh, there's lots of money to be made here, and that's why they've gone into it. Now I'm very much wiser at recognizing the signs. But just like you were naive when you went into your marriage, we can make the wrong decisions at times and choose the wrong person, or we can go into something for the wrong reason. And I think
Yeah,
it's very, very telling if you're watching and you're thinking of, well, I need help. I need to work with someone that would help me to understand myself. Then it's very important to think carefully to find the right person to
yeah,
go to something that they're doing. Like, for example, if you're thinking about your own relationships with yourself, with other people, then coming along to something that Sue runs, which is a workshop, a free workshop, where you can get a taste of how she works, who she is, a bit more about her story, and all of those things. It's a wonderful experience, and it gives you a chance to think, well, I could work with Sue. And I think because you've been through so much and you've worked through so many areas of your life, you're very you're very aware that it's not easy.
no,
You
it's
know,
not. And having someone holding your hand makes such a difference because you can see yourself. I mean, the great thing is I can look at you and see things that you can see. I can see how you stand in your own way. This is what
mm,
I mean by all these habits of being an automatic pilot without realizing.
mm,
And it feels so real. And then there are all these limiting beliefs that we think are real and true and are false completely. But we can't tell.
mm,
So I do sometimes still experience limiting beliefs. And then somebody looks at me and said, no, it's nothing like that. But until they see it and call it, hold up the mirror.
yes,
I'm not aware of it.
yes,
That's the beauty of, and also because I'm a stranger, not a family member or a friend, I don't have an
yes,
agenda. Often people close to us don't want us to change.
yeah, yeah. They're quite comfortable with the status quo,
Mm,
particularly, particularly in a relationship where the other partner is the dominant one, is the controlling one, is the one who actually likes the way
Yeah.
their life is. So seeing you change is a threat to their comfort. You know, you start changing things, they've got to change, and they don't want to.
Yes.
So
And
you
that
can
is the
get.
only way you can change somebody else is when you change the way you engage with them. And
Mhm,
so people can still be in a relationship, or they can be single and start as a mean to go on. But even if in a relationship, because I don't do couples, I work with
mhm,
individuals, and an individual can change a relationship. And the way they do it is because they change the way they communicate, the way they
mhm,
treat the other person.
mhm,
And there can be a number of things happening. At first, nothing will change. They might think it's a fluke or she's in a mood or something like that. But if you are consistent and persistent, so if you don't give up, if you don't send mixed messages, then sooner or later they will get it.
mhm,
And if they don't, however often you say, this is how I feel, this is what matters to me, this is what I need from you, and they still don't, then you have to make hard choices. And one of them might be to stay as it is and
mhm,
build a life for yourself within the relationship, but something of meaning to you. Or it might mean leaving.
mhm,
But
mhm,
either way, it's a difficult decision, which again, it's people like me who help you rebuild the next stage of your life.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think it's very profound. And you know, as you say, it's not an easy choice ever to change from the way that we're living our life in one way, because you know there's a comfort in doing that, in having people, in just keeping the status quo going, making choices that will have irrevocable consequences, and will involve other people. Getting that confidence first that you are worth it, because that comes out very strongly in your message. You know,
Yes,
it was only when you realized that you had a right to be loved. You know, you got a right to feel joy in your life, to feel happiness,
yes,
to see kindness. All of us are born with that, the right to be nurtured, cherished, protected, and
yes.
loved. That is our basic human rights before we're even born. In fact, when we're in the womb, that
Oh,
is
I
our
love that.
basic human right. And I've believed that fundamentally ever since I was a little girl. And, you know, I think the more that we can get that message out, the more that, and, you know, if you're watching and you don't feel one of those things, you know, you haven't got that kind of a life where there are people in your life to do that. And it doesn't have to be your husband. You know, it can be
No,
your
no,
parent, your
everybody. I'm talking
friend,
about everybody. It's
yes,
not just about your partner. It's your family, your friends, your work colleagues, everybody,
yes,
even strangers.
yeah,
It's about
yeah,
what you
definitely.
tolerate, what you're willing to accept.
Mm,
Most people I meet are afraid of standing up for themselves.
mm,
They think that by saying something, it'll make things worse.
mm,
But it's not at all,
mm,
because if you don't say anything, they'll carry on treating you the same way. And then the relationship will be damaged anyway.
mm.
But it's scary.
Yes,
There's no
it
question that
is.
it's scary. And there are ways to overcome it.
And, you know, it is scary. It's scary to do anything different, but that's why it's so important to be connected with someone who can help you, who can get through. I mean, it's not unlike, I mean, when my brother died, um, I was, you know, heartbroken. I genuinely thought he would be healed. You know, I thought he would get better. And and then he was gone, and he'd been my hero for ever since I was born. Um, and I needed support to get through the grief. I needed support to be able to talk it through, to understand what was going on
Yes,
inside of myself, and to give
yes.
myself permission to grieve, because it wasn't something I could get over in a week or two.
No,
You
my
know,
God,
it took a
no.
long, long time. And it was very precious to have that safe space that I knew was going to happen. You know, every couple of weeks, I knew there was an hour in my day that I could talk and share everything that was going on inside me, and she could help me to process it
Yeah.
all. And without that person to support me, I don't know how I would have coped. I genuinely don't. And what you're saying really is that walk through life with Alan helping you to make the decision to change. But first of all, to love and accept yourself in a way that made it possible for you to even accept that there could be change.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
that's
absolutely.
huge. It's huge.
It is. And I've discovered, because when you know yourself, you know what works for you. And
Mm,
I find that I need to talk things out to somebody who will hold my space
yes.
for me to understand what's going on with me.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, I just run around in my own head, just chasing my tail. But when I speak about it, I suddenly hear something coming out of my own mouth that I hadn't thought about, I hadn't realized. Just like when I with that forgiveness meditation, when it came out of my mouth and I didn't really know it was there.
Yes.
And sometimes there are surprises that come out of, well, oh my God, I didn't realize. And then you get clarity.
Yeah. I mean, do you know what? We're going to pause. I'm going to stop here for the listeners. We've been going through Sue's story here, and we've learned a lot about early years. We've learned a lot about the decisions that she made, the learning journey that she went on while she was still in her marriage. But if you want to hear about the next step, the next stage of Sue's life when she was outside of her marriage and all of the things that happened there, then join us on the next video because you're going to learn some more useful tips and ideas and things that will help you to step into your future instead of being tied to the past and or to the present, actually. So yeah, do come back if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions for Sue, if you want to connect with her, then we'll be sharing the link so that you can book a call with her. And we'll also be sharing some resources from Sue to help and support you on your journey. So thank you very much, Sue, for being with me this morning. I look forward to talking
Oh,
to you again.
thank you for giving me an opportunity.